So as the presidential election battle between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris intensifies, another move by the American vice president is grabbing all the eyeballs. Kamala Harris' statement on her meeting with Netanyahu and also her absence from the Israeli Prime Minister's speech to the US Congress is being seen by many as a clear snub to Netanyahu. Now, Kamala Harris met with Netanyahu at the vice president's ceremonial office a day after his speech. In the meeting, Harris, while maintaining Washington's support for the state of Israel, has said that she will not be silent on the dire humanitarian conditions that have been brought about in the Gaza Strip.
What has happened in Gaza over the past 9 months is devastating. The images of dead children and desperate, hungry people fleeing for safety, sometimes displaced for the second, third, or fourth time. We cannot look away in the face of these tragedies. We cannot allow ourselves to become numb to the suffering, and I will not be silent.
Now, Kamala Harris gave Netanyahu's congressional address a miss to attend an annual sorority in Indianapolis. Now, the vice president's absence has raised a number of questions on whether the US-Israel ties will witness a shift should Kamala Harris win the elections in November and assume office. The move is also considered a big statement in itself because traditionally, whenever a foreign leader addresses a joint US Congress session, it is customary for the Speaker of the House and the Vice President of the nation to be seated behind the Speaker. Now, that was the case during Netanyahu's earlier congressional addresses in 1996, and then the then Vice President Al Gore had sat in one of the chairs behind him. In 2011 as well, the then Vice President Joe Biden had assumed this position behind the Israeli Prime Minister. But this time round, the Vice President's seat was empty at the US Congress. The presumptive Democrat presidential nominee's remarks signal what many are calling a pretty drastic change in tone when it comes to the US's policy on Israel. But the timing of it has also raised questions on whether Harris will be taking a pretty tougher stance against Netanyahu, or is it a pre-election gimmick? And to give us more updates, insights on this, we're being joined by Mr. Jonah Blank, he's joining us live from Washington, D.C. Now, Mr. Blank is in fact a former foreign policy advisor to President Joe Biden. Mr. Blank, thank you very much indeed, sir, for joining us here on WION. And this, of course, is going to be talked about a lot. The fact that Kamala Harris decided to skip Benjamin Netanyahu's address to the Congress, and also the statement that she's put out, that she's not going to remain silent in the face of such dire humanitarian catastrophe that is unfolding at this moment in Gaza. Do you think this is a message that is now registered with Netanyahu?
Well, thank you for having me. I do think this is a message that has registered and definitely should register with Prime Minister Netanyahu. Vice President Harris's words were far more compassionate towards Palestinian suffering and foregrounding Palestinian suffering than we've heard from President Biden or from any recent president. And this really does matter. Now, I think it is important that she is skipping the joint session of Congress, and I think it's the right move. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, let's remember the last time that Netanyahu addressed a joint session of Congress was 2015. And the vice president also skipped that session. That vice president was Joe Biden.
It's interesting that you point out that that vice president was Joe Biden. He missed the 2015 address of Netanyahu. But the fact is, in this war, for people who are watching as to how this war has unfolded, Israel could not have carried out this war without the support that it has got from Joe Biden's administration, where many people are saying that Joe Biden has in fact backed the Israelis to the hilt in this war, even though on occasions Joe Biden has said that he would like to see a ceasefire, that he wants to see an end to this bloodshed. But the fact is, Joe Biden has backed this war for Netanyahu. He even in fact once said that there could perhaps be coming to the Jesus moment with Netanyahu that he would want to have. But this message by Kamala Harris seems very different from the kind of language that we've seen from Joe Biden. Is there a clear departure by Kamala Harris on how she would want to deal with the Israeli question?
Well, that remains to be seen. You're absolutely right that Joe Biden has really substantively backed Netanyahu at every stage. He's done virtually nothing to rein Netanyahu in. His rhetoric often has suggested that some action would be coming in the future, but it never has actually come. And Vice President Harris has had rhetoric that is more encouraging from a Palestinian standpoint. But again, we don't really know whether that rhetoric is going to be backed up with action. What action really would matter? Well, specifically, halting U.S. military aid to Israel, which would seem on the face of it to be required by at least 3 current U.S. laws. So I doubt we're going to see any real motion before the election.
Right, and also very quickly, one last question, if I can get you to weigh in on. Now, considering the amount of impact that the Jewish lobby, AIPAC, has on American politics. Now, this is a statement by Kamala Harris which would be seen to be quite clearly going against what the AIPAC lobby within Washington would want her to say. Do you think that could dent some of her chances for the Democrats?
Well, AIPAC has basically aligned itself with Republicans right now, and so have a lot of other institutional supporters of Netanyahu. Netanyahu himself has made pretty clear since 2015 that he is going to gear his policies towards the U.S. Republican Party. But Kamala Harris is unlikely, in my view, to really make a radical departure from Biden's approach before the election.
All right, we'll have to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed, Mr. Blank, for joining us from Washington, D.C. and getting us all those insights there.
Thank you.
For all the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.